Welcome. Welcome to Navigating the New Normal, CDFI in a Hybrid Work Environment. I am Ugochi Dania. I am a human resources client executive and DEI leader with One Digital, which is a human resources, employee benefits, and financial services consulting firm. As we get started, excuse me, I want to note that we are recording this webinar and provide a few housekeeping tips. On the top right-hand side of your screen, you will see icons for the chat and Q&A features. We encourage you to use the features to comment, introduce yourselves, and interact with other participants throughout this session. Please feel free to submit questions throughout the program using the Q&A box as the questions come to you, as they occur to you. We will address the audience questions immediately following this session in an interactive Zoom room. In that Zoom discussion room, each participant immediately following in this Zoom room, each participant will be able to use their video and audio to interact with our panelists and other attendees. And to get you started, I'd like to have our session host introduce our panelists, and then I will speak more about our function throughout this actual activity.
For sure. Micha, would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Micha Gioseffi. I'm Executive Director of the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast, and I'm very happy to be here.
Robin?
Hi, I'm Robin, and yes, that's really my name. I married it, so it's my husband's fault, not my parents. I am the head of HR for the Primary Care Development Corporation. I've been here for about 18 months or so, and I've been working in nonprofit management at every level for 30-some plus million thousand years.
Great. And Seal?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Seal Prinster. I'm President and CEO of Colorado Enterprise Fund. We're a CDFI located in Denver, Colorado, serving the state of Colorado. And I've been with the organization for over 30-some plus million years as well. And so I appreciate everyone's time and attention today. And as we look forward to talking about this changing work environment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Micha. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Seal. Let's get started in this conversation about this new hybrid work environment. Now, since the COVID-19 pandemic, the entire world has had to adapt to remote work. For CDFIs, this has been especially challenging as you've had to balance this new way of working with the demands of the Paycheck Protection Program and helping clients access affordable capital during all of this time of uncertainty. So as we move beyond the pandemic, CDFIs are experiencing significant growth, not only in terms of your balance sheets, but also in the number of staff that you're employing. And balancing this growth with the challenges of learning to work in a hybrid remote environment is a difficult task. So in this conversation, for the audience, our speakers will share what has worked for their organizations in terms of adapting to this new way of working. However, we do recognize that there is still so much to be learned and discussed, and we hope to explore this topic further during this session. So I wanted to share, just to put some additional context to this, just a few stats, and then I have direct questions for all of our panelists here. According to Forbes, 36 million Americans will be working remotely in 2025, and that's a 417% increase from our pre-pandemic levels. And this remote work option has created some cost savings. At the same time, it's caused leaders and organizations to really think through how to attract talent And when we're talking about attracting talent and bringing them into the organization, one of the things that's challenging is the aspect of onboarding new staff in this remote hybrid environment. So my question to all of you is, how has onboarding new staff been for each of you? And what's worked well and what really hasn't worked well in this remote and hybrid environment?
Should I go first?
Sure.
Okay. So, we Primary Care Development Corporation, we like every other CDFI work with by giving loans and providing funding to small community healthcare centers. And we also do provide technical advice. So we have staff in 13 states across the country. We've spent time leveraging software like Jazz HR, and making sure that we have documented the process from the beginning to the end for onboarding. We've really made a onboarding plan for the first week of onboarding very specifically. That includes HR's functioning, IT, and payroll issues. And each division has an onboarding process that's overseen by the supervisor in that division or department, depending on how that plays out. Mm-hmm. And last year, PCDC conducted a salary compensation study to ensure that we're paying staff equitably. Masteron Solutions helped us do that, and we are reviewing. We reviewed and updated our job descriptions, which we're still kind of in the process of doing. We are in the process of creating a new performance appraisal tool. We're building a staff career ladder. We're conducting a review of our benefits this year, which includes asking staff what they would like. Additionally, we have two brief surveys that we ask staff to do, one based on 30 days and one after 120 days, to see how things are going for folks and getting input. And if there's a place where HR needs to step in and add value, then we can do that. Additionally, as part of our general process, but also specifically in the onboarding process, we have frequent meetings. So staff supervisors do one-on-ones with their direct reports. Departments have weekly or bi-weekly meetings and we have cross-functional collaborative meetings where different departments are focused on some cross-functional work. We have bi-monthly all-staff meetings. We have leadership team meetings every 3 weeks. We have executive team meetings, which is the senior leadership of the organization, and we have twice yearly staff retreats. All of that is part, and I could wax poetic about each part, but I don't think that's what we should be doing here. But each one of those pieces is really important in allowing staff to become part of the culture and, do the housekeeping things. Where's the bathroom? How do you use Zoom? The different things that they might to do. And that's like a brief synopsis of what PCDC has been doing. And it has been working really well because we're doing it intentionally and thoughtfully.
That's fantastic. And I think one of the things we can circle back to later is that when you mentioned the onboarding plan, because I think you need to have a plan for how to manage your remote and your hybrid workforce. So Steele, how about you? What's been working well for you, and as well as what has been a challenge in terms of onboarding staff?
Yeah, so we're in a much different place. And I was taking notes when Robin was talking because she's the HR manager. And coincidentally, I just had a final call with a person we're going to be extending an offer to for our first director of HR. So we're very excited about that. And our staff has grown probably about 40% in the last year and a half, I'd say 2 years. And so we have a big mix of people who have been with us for a long time, some who have just been with us for a few years, including some pre-COVID, but not when we were really small. And then a large handful of people who have come on since COVID, when we have been almost 100% remote. And we were 100% remote for a good 2 years. And our situation was I don't know if I'd say complicated, but we our lease came up in 2021, and so we had to decide what we were going to do with our space. And we had gone through a discernment process before COVID hit, and we all went remote, and it looked much different as we changed to a remote operation, and we're able to close loans virtually and all of that. So that whole physical space changed dramatically, and we had a whole plan about that, which I can talk about later. But that has influenced our situation. But with all the new people we've brought on, I'll admit we haven't done a very good job of onboarding. And because we've grown so fast and are a smaller organization where everyone used to come into the office, and you would just sort of go around and sit with people and say, tell me about what you do. And there was maybe a sheet of a small notebook or a few handouts about where things were. And it was just a much more kind of a shadowing kind of onboarding than a onboarding plan. And so we're at that stage where we really need to have more formality, and we have recognized that, including having hired some executive leaders who have said, my onboarding process, well, to use their words, it sucked. It was terrible. I don't know where anything is on our systems, and it really wasn't all that friendly. And, we got to do something about this. So we're being very intentional that this is definitely a priority, and that it's affecting our, and that we want to make it better for our culture going forward. But what we have done, though, is we do have a very robust, what I would say, technology platform that we worked on right before we all went remote and hybrid. And we use everything we do is supported by technology. And many of the things that Robin was talking about, as far as the meetings that we have and the connections that we have, I think are also in place. It's just a little bit less structured and prescribed, if you will. And so it may get applied unevenly across our team. But I think as we develop that HR function in our organization in a more built out way, it will do a lot for us to have a better start to our employees' experience and journey with our organization. And I think people who are at a higher level and we have hired people at all levels. I think people at higher levels have the ability to reach out a little bit more, and the others, because they cross different categories a lot more than maybe more junior people who are more focused on their departments. And so I think having that kind of uniform experience will be really critical, and we're looking forward to being able to implement that. So we might call you, Robin.
Well, see, let me just tell you, don't be so hard on yourself.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Right? I have worked at organizations that have had 3,500 employees, 600 employees. And let me tell you, when I walked in the door, my head exploded, because they hadn't taken the time. They were not methodical and thoughtful and intentional about really building out what that looks like. And so it was very casual and haphazard. And you might not be that giant, but you are taking all the important steps to help the organization move forward, because as you grow bigger, it becomes more and more important to have that set plan in place.
Absolutely.
People can feel
and it is a journey. It's a journey to really get there. But I think one of the things that I heard you speak about is making a decision around your real estate very quickly, that a lot of organizations feel a little stuck and have either purchased a new office suite thinking their people would move into it, and COVID hit. And so, and having to make different decisions now that they have this financial piece that's sitting there relative to a mortgage, to a real estate or something. So kudos to you and your group for doing that quicker. And then, the systems is a journey with the systems, given the exponential growth that you've just described. So Miha, tell me more about your group and what you have done relative to onboarding.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of opportunity to do onboarding over the past couple of years because, just like Seal, when I came on as executive director in 2019, we had 6 staff. Now our 14th is going to be onboarded in a couple of weeks in April. So more than doubled in the last 4 years. And really not to repeat what other folks have said, I think of it as a 3-step, right? We have our admin manager who has a real nice checklist that she's developed to make sure that folks are set on their HR, on the tech, all of that. And then the supervisor certainly trains on the actual job expectations and systems. And generally, the expectation is that when there's a new person on board, they're going to have a lot more frequent check-ins with their supervisor until some of that trust is developed that, yeah, they understand where things are, they get it, and they know that they can call when they need help. And then a month or 2 after someone's on board and they really understand their job, then I'll sit down with them and I'll talk about what's the strategic plan look like? What's our history? What's our financial model? So these are things that may not be directly influenced every day by each staff person's work, but they provide the context so that people understand how their work fits into the larger picture.
Excellent. And I think regardless of whether they were remote or not, what you just described in terms of building that context is absolutely important for every new employee, because they really need to understand, they come into the door wanting to know their purpose. How is their work going to connect with the bigger business objectives of the organization? So really getting that within the onboarding process is definitely key. And then they can always ask questions along the way. But as well as your mission and your core value and your culture. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But I have a specific question for Seal right now. So, on the opposite side of things, one of the bigger benefits of remote hybrid environments is this access to a larger, a much wider talent pool. Tell me more about how you've been successful in your grouping to attract that new talent, because that's a challenge, but you also have more access. So what has it been like for you?
Interesting question. And I would also add retain talent.
Yes, exactly.
Because we have had 2 of our best performers of staff members moved out of state. And, and one of them is a very long-serving director level person who is a very high level performer. And he I think being in a hybrid environment, I think it's really extended his work life, because it's suited him very well to be able to balance work life as well as to just get more done. And so he moved out of state for family reasons, and both of them did. And so we were like, well, we don't want to cut them off because they're both really good people and very, they contribute a lot. And then on the other side, I think we haven't really attracted too many people initially from out of state, but we have attracted people from farther away in state, and, people who would not have wanted to commute to the office. And so I think having the ability to have the flexible work environment where we do have occasional, we have once a month all staff that we consider mandatory, pretty mandatory anyway. We have to have a really good reason to not show up in person, but if you're within reasonable driving distance, it's something that I think we have been able to draw from a larger geographic area because of that. So I don't know if you want me to, the downside, of course, is figuring out, well, what else? How is it just this once a month thing, or are we going to move beyond that? And we just finished our remodeling of our office about, it's probably been about 6 months now. and it took quite a long time. And so it gave us a little bit extra wiggle room with a timeline to not have to push the issue so much. But we kept our lease. Our landlord gave us a really good deal to keep us in the space, and we actually took a little more space, but we did recognize that we weren't going to have the same kind of space that we would have had prior to the change to a more hybrid environment.
Yeah, and one of the things that pops up, especially with the attracting the talent, certainly retaining talent around in this hybrid remote work environment that we're asking, but mostly, when we're talking about attracting new candidates to the organization, they know they have options. That's one, and at the same time, they have specific questions about work-life balance, integration, whatever we want to call it now. Whether or not that's going to be better or worse. When you mentioned, geographically, you have people that are now more interested than they were before. Working for your organization. Those are elements that they're asking about, as well as, what's the level of flexibility and autonomy and ability for co-creating their work moving forward. So, one of the things around attracting that talent and bringing them in is making sure that we have leaders and managers that can really help staff create that equilibrium around their personal and their professional life. And there's some benefits to this remote environment and being able to allow them to have that flexibility in their work, and as well as in their ability to work for the organization as well. So I think that one of the things that it's also really important, and there are organizations that are 100% remote. And Misha, your organization has been 100% remote, fully remote, as we all say. What advice can you give to other CDFIs about remote policies, remote work policies at work, and those that just don't?
Yeah, so this is something, we're still definitely in the learning process around this. As I said, just a couple of years ago, we were 6 staff, and the policies and structures that work for a 6-staff organization are different than for a 14-staff organization, are different for 50, et cetera. So with the rapid growth, we're needing to implement more and new systems, and we're learning as we go. So what I'm going to say is definitely not the be all end all. It's more a snapshot of kind of where we are right now. Sure. And I think what I would focus in on 3 different areas. The first is looking at compensation. The second is around IT support. And then the third is around trust, particularly around time management. So compensation, what we do is provide each staff person with what we believe is a generous and flexible monthly $500 office stipend. This is part of their payroll, and so they don't need to submit receipts. There's no approval process. This can go for staff people who need to go to a work share space. They don't have space in their house, or just to kind of help bolster the fact that they're taking up some part of their private life space, their residence, for an office. It can, if they need extra furniture, if they need stuff like that, then we encourage them to use that home stipend. We do provide a laptop and an external monitor, and for admin staff, we do provide a printer scanner. But that's pretty much it right now. So the $500 does a lot. We also provide a $300 one-time home office setup allowance for some of the furniture that folks might need. I think on the IT support, one of the most frustrating things about the workplace is when IT systems don't work, right? Because you can't work if your computer is not working.
Yeah.
So we don't have a dedicated staff person who's an IT expert. We're not that big, but we do have a dedicated staff person who's kind of the triage person when any staff have a tech issue. We also have a contracted IT support services company that handles our server and security and laptop setups, all of that more complicated stuff. But by having someone on staff who's that point person, then anyone can at any point pick up the phone or chat them and say, hey, this isn't working, help me out. And then that person can figure out, can I solve it, or do we need to go to the outsourced partners? Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is around trust. And I think, trust is really a core component of our work, especially how we manage a fully remote office. We're not there. We don't see each other. We don't see, is someone at their desk or not? We generally expect staff to work normal business hours, but we don't use any staff monitoring tech. Like, we're not buying into the staff surveillance mentality, at least at this point. Hopefully we never will. We know that sometimes the demands of work extend beyond work hours, and sometimes the demands of home extend into work hours. And we trust that staff are balancing that. We know that if they're having trouble balancing that, then they come talk to their supervisor, and we can figure out, what's going on. Is there too much on your plate? Do you need some help with the soft skills around structuring that time? We also, sort of the hand in glove with that, is that we take flex time really seriously, right? So flex time recognizes that sometimes work can't be done in the normal 9 to 5. And rather than expecting staff to sacrifice their personal life, staff can take non-leave time during work hours to compensate for work that's done during evenings or weekends, which sometimes is necessary in the work that we're doing. So at all levels of the organization, we try to reinforce maintaining good work-life balance and open space to discuss challenges that come up. We are starting to dip our toes into the idea not just of flex time, but flex space. And this is an area where we have a lot of questions, and certainly would be curious, to hear from other folks. But as a baseline, we're a regional CDFI 7-state region in the Northeast. We hire folks from within our region, whether they're operations, kind of back office, or outreach. And we do that because everyone's bringing valuable connections to the table. And it allows for, when we do meet in person, to do that more easily. But there are times when, for family reasons or other reasons, folks, decide that they would love to be able to work from Florida for a week or two, or from Ireland for a week or two. And so we've been experimenting with allowing for that, trying to think about what are the security and the tech issues, and just the workflow issues to make that happen. But I think with all of this, more flexibility really does allow us to recruit and retain a strong workforce.
That's great. And I love the fact that, there's this level of trust that you are, is a core value and for the organization that is really sensitive to. We are now, or have been for years, on this 24-hour cycle. And so, with COVID, and when people had, if you still have children in your space, and managing your life and your work in such a fluid way, we have become even more fluid, if you will, because of our remote and hybrid work environment. And so one of the things that we always speak about from the HR consulting perspective is, organizations that are still tied to what we call presenteeism, where they don't know if someone's really doing that work unless they're physically in front of them. And we don't have that luxury in the same way. And a lot of leaders still struggle with that. And so it's something we work with them to make them understand the value of this remote hybrid work in terms of meeting the productivity, the revenue, as well as what the level of productivity you get from your employees. But knowing that a new talent coming in, knowing that I will be trusted to be able to do my work in this particular way, within the cooperative fund, as well as you're giving them almost $800 worth of, they just get money. I mean, just to be able to build out their hybrid environment and workspace. Those are really key elements, because those are what I'm hearing talent say they want to know that I can do my work when I can, how I can, and there isn't any surveillance of my time, so that I can be as productive as I can when I know I'm able to, be it if I'm single or if I'm married, and have children. So those are great pieces. Seal and Robin, are there any things that you're doing really innovative in terms of your remote workforce that you want to share?
Well, I'll just share a little bit more about what I've alluded to with our office space. We're pretty excited about it. So when we had the opportunity to renew our lease, our landlord said that they would, they would completely redo all the lighting to LED lighting, paint, carpet, do whatever demolition we wanted to do, walls. So we just took out all of the cubicles in this big room, and made it into a very large open training room. We call it a training room, but we ordered flexible furniture that we can either have training or meetings, or we can put all that away and have a happy hour. We have some tall tables, we have some couches. We did a lot of reading about different models, and then we have small, medium, large, and extra large conference rooms where folks can come work, and then we do have some offices that are available for people to just come in and use on sort of a hotel basis, and then we have a smaller cubicle area as well for people who are going to be in on a more regular basis. So we have really something for everyone. And it was really a great opportunity to try to reimagine our physical space. And now we're sort of going maybe a little bit backwards of we sort of had the urgency of renewing our lease, deciding, do we even want a space? That question actually came up. And we decided that, we're trying to establish ourselves as a legitimate organization. We have a lot of people, things are going to change going down the road. We can't just assume it's always going to be like this. And people do need to have connections with each other in person. Absolutely. So we're really excited about it right now because we're just sort of experimenting with it. And we're seeing our space as also a place where we can convene other organizations and really try to, extend that space with its new look and feel and furniture and all of that to other members of our community and to kind of build community and awareness and all of that goes with it, as well as with our staff.
That sounds great. Absolutely. And before we move on to our next question, and at the onset of this question I asked Miha, it was about remote work policies. And I just wanted to share with the audience, as you're building out your policies, if you're just at the start of this, and certainly Miha gave you a lot of great elements, be it the technologies and trusting your staff in terms of their ability to do their work. But when we're talking about the remote work policies, and if you're just at the onset of this, really look at the jobs that you have and which ones are truly are remote eligible, as we say. And at the same time, so those positions that are, as you would performance management within the positions that would be in within the organization, for the remote, your remote staff, really be clear about the performance metrics that they will be evaluated against, as well as looking at your communication piece. And we'll talk about internal communications in the next minute. But at the same time, the legal compliance elements that you need to think about relative to remote work, making sure you have policies that speak to that, as well as with your technologies, which technologies and the updating of your technologies are absolutely critical. Various collaboration tools for your communications are key in this remote hybrid work environment, making sure that you're dealing with the privacy issues and equipment as you need to, and having those acknowledgement forms for the equipment and any other policy or privacy acknowledgements that you need for your staff. So just wanted to share just those few steps that you could potentially use to generate or develop a policy if you don't have one. And we can certainly share more information later. But one of the big pieces that continues to be an area that I see working with leaders from the consulting space is managing their culture in this remote hybrid work environment, excuse me. And in this kind of environment, it is absolutely challenging to be able to maintain company culture. This question is for all of you in terms of how have you each been successful in making sure that you're maintaining not only the culture of the organization, but the core values of the organization in this remote hybrid environment? And how are you sustaining that on a regular basis with your employees?
Yeah, it's been challenging. I worked, it's interesting because working for PCDC and having a majority of our staff are in the New York area, but we're all over the country at this point, and we've made an intentional decision to find the best skilled employees that we can to bring them in to do this work. This is really about the small community healthcare centers that we're focusing on. So, we've been methodical and intentional, and we try to be thorough about every decision as we move forward. That's great. But we're being intentional about our meeting structure, ensuring that staff are communicating, and sort of speaks to what we've already talked about around communication, but really making sure that we're having opportunities to get together. We have a fun committee, which I thought was a delight. I think Seal mentioned it earlier. We had a scavenger hunt. We've gone bowling. We've done a walking tour of New York City for staff that were from outside of New York City that came for one of our retreats. We do some departments will do Friday afternoon lunch. We're remote, but we're online and we're eating lunch together. They have a happy hour, a couple of the departments where they're just at the end of the week, they get together and have a chat. We've done trivia contests. The other thing we've done is, since we are, I think I mentioned earlier that we're having these retreats 2 times a year where we're bringing people in from outside of New York. In fact, we're talking about maybe we'll do it someplace else. But for now, we're bringing folk into New York City. We're spending a week. Each department spends 1 day together and in person. And that's an opportunity. They might go out for dinner together, later on in that evening. And then there's 2 days together sharing information, conducting workshops focused on whatever theme we've come up to. We spend a half a day on wellness, getting a massage, getting your feet rubbed, you're doing Tai Chi together. And the other thing we do is we conduct site visits. And the one thing that came out of the last site visit that we did was that we definitely needed to do more site visits and provide an opportunity for staff that are traveling to, because not everybody is seeing the good work that comes out of our collaborations with small community healthcare centers across the United States. So, bringing them in to see a place and letting them interact with the clients perhaps, or see the facilities that we've helped fund is really deeply impactful. We also are, we're currently doing our strategic plan for the next 3 years. And we made a decision not to focus on 5, but on 3, because, the last 2 was kind of a crapshoot. And if this last period is any indication, that could indeed be the case again. But what we're doing is we're involving our staff, and we're really, this retreat we're having in May is we're focusing on our strategic planning. We are providing opportunities for teams to speak on issues or concerns or things that we're trying to work on together as we build that strategic plan. So, we're giving key members of staff a voice. We're also redoing, I think I mentioned it earlier, our performance appraisal tool. and focusing on staff goals and objectives, but also on staff competencies and providing staff an opportunity to celebrate their accomplishments, because I'm a firm believer that every supervisor reviews you on the last bad thing you did.
Sure.
The last mistake you made. It's what we remember. And so I always encourage, bringing accomplishments in, giving people, a chance to toot their own horn. And I will say that I was at one organization where I found out that we had 2 employees that had never received a merit raise of any kind, and no one had ever told them they had done a good job. Now, that was horrible in and of itself. But when I discovered that those were the people who answered our phones and allowed schools to come and visit our facilities, I was horrified. I was like, how can that be? I went to our CEO, I said, they need a raise today. But the point here is providing staff with both an opportunity to speak and to share their opinions, and provide them an opportunity to hear that they are appreciated and that the quality of their work is at a certain kind of level. And really connecting it with competencies organizationally, being able to say, this is what a strong performer looks like, and this is what an ineffectual performer looks like. And, bringing those pieces together is really having a positive impact on our organizational culture, because people feel heard. Yeah. And they get to, add value in the places where they can. So
I appreciate that. And I'm going to give Steele and Misha, in the 4 minutes we have left, in about 1.5 minutes or so, share with us again, what are you doing? What's been the biggest impact to your company culture relative to doing this in this remote hybrid environment?
Go ahead, Misha.
Yeah, I think so. So the biggest, I'm going to actually say 3, but I'll say them very quickly.
Okay.
The first is that we have weekly 1.5-hour staff meetings, which in some ways feels like a lot of dedicated time, but it really gives us time to get to know each other, personal life milestones, who's excited about their upcoming haircut, it really ranges the gamut, as well as organizational updates, and then some time for open discussion. Perfect. The second is thinking about ways to allow people to bring their whole person to the workplace, right? If someone's really stressed out or upset in an in-person workplace, then they'll grab a colleague and go for a walk, get a drink of coffee, whatever. And so we need to create opportunities for folks to release that steam even remotely. And whether that happens in planned or spontaneous calls, chats, whatever, that's really important. And then the final is that even as a fully remote organization, we still see the importance of in-person gatherings. Mm-hmm. So obviously the public health aspect of the pandemic made that really hard and even dangerous for many people. Now we're coming back into a new public health phase. We're going to be having our first in-person all-staff retreat in a couple of weeks. But then even looking at conferences and other gatherings as opportunities for multiple staff people to come together and have that time together has been important.
Fantastic. Steele?
Great. Those are good thoughts. And I would just say our all staff in-person monthly gatherings have really started to show some results and bearing fruit with that, as far as the kind of enthusiasm and the welcoming of the new people, especially. But some of these new people have been with us for a year or more. The other thing we've done is in December we did a staff engagement survey, and then have been following up on that ever since, with different aspects of it that came out in the survey. And that, I think the critical thing is the follow-up, and to show how we're acting on things that staff has brought up as issues or concerns, or just things that they like. And so things like, doing shout outs and kudos to staff at our meetings, of sharing things that their teammates have done, and little things like that, on up to bigger things like we don't see enough of our customers. And so some of those site visits would be a really great idea, like Robin, you were sharing. So I think the follow-up is really critical and tying it back to that survey. So we'll be ready to do another one pretty soon, but, really trying to get as much as we can out of the one that we did.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, Misha, Robin, Seal, and sharing your insights and your expertise. And I hope that our audience were able to take a few items away with them. And I thank you, the audience, for joining us today. And if you're watching this live, I hope you'll join us in the interactive Zoom room for Q&A. You get to ask more questions to our panelists about their experiences and any tidbits that they have around continuing to make remote hybrid work in their particular areas. You can access the Zoom room by clicking the Join the Interactive Session Discussion Group link, which is at the bottom of this page below the session description. Please give us a minute to make the switch over to the interactive Zoom room. And if you decide not to join the discussion room, I thank you for your time. I believe that there's a closing element to this if you want to join at that time, the closing plenary at 4:30. But thank you again. Thank you, Seal. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Miha. Thank you, audience, for being with us as we talk about navigating in this hybrid and remote work environment.
Thank you.